Welcome back to the Junkie Sports Podcast today. So this is our draft special episode. So with the NBA draft coming up here in just 5 days, we wanted to do a last episode before that draft. I know our listeners kind of already heard our mock draft, but we kind of wanted to go through and bring up some different topics to discuss pre-draft. Before that happens. So we're gonna go ahead and kick it off with a pretty common topic going into draft night, and that's the really early Rookie of the Year pick. So Davis, who is your pick for the 2020-2021 NBA season Rookie of the Year?
So this is going to come to a surprise to a lot of our listeners because I haven't been very high on this dude, but it's Obi Toppin. And here's my reasoning behind it.
Oh,
So I like I said, I think he's a guy that can fall a lot on draft night. But he is one of the older guys coming into it. He's more NBA ready than a lot of these potential young boys coming in. But that being said, I think he's going to be most likely going to a situation like Cleveland or, a team that, is really needing some help now. And he's going to be he's going to be vaulted into a position in which he's going to be like the primary guy for his team, as opposed to a lot of these prospects who are, a little bit more projects, so to speak. And we've kind of seen some of that come to fruition in previous years. I know that, obviously Obi Toppin, he's not a horrible like draft prospect in general coming in. Like he's still projected into the lottery, and he won the NCAA like MVP last year as well out of Dayton. But I mean, he's a flashy player. He's a lob threat, and he's a boy that can definitely, barring any injuries, I think he could be vying for that position, even though he might not be, 5 years from now, the best player from this draft.
yeah. So before I get my pick, Davis, I'm just gonna say I'm disappointed to hear you say that for sure. I know we've had our conversations about our lack of interest in Obi Toppin and how we kind of feel he's going to do in the NBA. But so my pick for Rookie of the Year, it's someone I've been high on for a long time. I don't know why. I just have a feeling he's going to click in the NBA, and that's LaMelo Ball. I know he's got a lot of questions about his game, but there are a lot of things he does super well, and there has been a long history of players going to play overseas, and then they come to the NBA, and they absolutely stand out in their first season. And so that's something I kind of look to see from him is having that overseas experience, playing in Lithuania, playing in the Australian League. I think he's going to come over and be a little step ahead of some of these college players because he's playing against men overseas. And so I think a big deal for him is just going to be getting to the right position, the right team, the right fit there. And if he can do that, I've got no worries about him at all. I just think he's got a really great offensive package, and I think he's gonna get that Rookie of the Year pick.
So I'm sorry, I had to fact check you on this, but so outside of Luka Doncic, can you name what other international players have came over and won Rookie of the Year
I mean, I'm
recently?
not
Because you
necessarily
said there was a
saying Rookie of the
great,
Year,
there was a
but no,
great.
I'm saying there's a history of those players going overseas and then coming to the NBA and like playing great basketball. And I know, and I know a lot of times like they may not necessarily win Rookie of the Year, but I think that overseas experience is way more valuable than playing college basketball,
Here's a random
without a doubt.
question for you, because I don't hate the LaMelo Ball pick, right? I mean, he's got, as we've said in previous episodes, probably the highest ceiling out of any player here, and it's just a matter of time seeing if he's able to unlock that level of his player development track. But theoretically, if he has the highest like turnover to assist ratio of any like qualifying point guards from this draft, do you think he can still win it even with that?
I
Because I
mean,
think that's a possibility. Like, I'm not saying that he can't win it, but I'm saying I think it's likely that he's going to have a lot more turnovers than any of these other candidates.
oh,
And I
without a
don't
doubt.
know. I don't know. So he's still able to win it even with that in mind.
I mean, I could be wrong on this, but I'm fairly certain Ja Morant had like the most turnovers out of those rookies because he's their primary ball handler. He's a rookie point guard. He's going to have those turnovers. That's not something that's going to upset me or throw me off with LaMelo Ball. I think for him, it's just going to be the scoring efficiency. That's what I want to see from him because, especially with Lonzo in the league, I know that, and obviously they're different players, but I know Lonzo has and still slightly continues to struggle with being extremely efficient from the field and not really prepared to go up against NBA defenders. And I think LaMelo's a little bit better suited for that. He's going to have his brother Lonzo in the league and kind of help him work through that process and kind of be as NBA ready as possible, as early as possible. And so I think there are significant questions about him, and I don't blame it at all. I know there's a lot of questions about his motor and that sort of thing, but at the same time, like, I mean, the dude puts up numbers, and I just see him continuing to do that into the NBA. But at the end of the day, it's just he needs to be efficient. That's what I need to see from him: is scoring efficiency.
That's fair. All right. With that being said, let's go into our dark horse candidates for rookie of the year. So David, do you want to start us off on that?
Yeah. So my first dark horse candidate is Aaron Nesmith. So out of Vanderbilt, and the reason why is because arguably the best shooter in the draft. And I think that's going to hold a lot of weight, especially for Rookie of the Year. The way the NBA has sort of moved into this 3-point shooting dominant league, I think it's going to be extremely valuable. And then obviously he's also a small forward, he's a wing player. And I think those wings usually typically do a little bit better than the NBA. They usually have a little bit better upside. I mean, when you look at some of the better players in the NBA, it's kind of hard for guards to become the absolute best player in the NBA. I mean, it's usually your wings because they got that size on them. And so I think that's something that's going to be really helping him out. He's a 6'6" small forward. And so I just think because he's such a lights out shooter, I think there's that potential there for him to just kind of come out red hot and just be an absolute sniper the next season.
Oh, that's fair. I definitely think Aaron Nesmith is the kind of guy that is very boom or bust. Looking at the next level in his game, especially coming off that injury. I mean, we just haven't seen a lot of him recently, and we don't know how he's going to come back from that injury. But I definitely think, I mean, assuming he can stay healthy, stay on the court, I don't see any reason why he can't, transition his game to the next level. I just think, um, yeah, I don't know. That's a good little dark horse candidate for sure. So I'll go into my first dark horse candidate, and I'm gonna have, let's see, Cole Anthony. So Cole Anthony is another guy that his draft stock has been slipping and slipping as we've got closer and closer to the draft, which is absolutely mind-boggling to me because yes, I understand that he didn't have the greatest college basketball season with the Tar Heels last year. But that being said, that was also probably the worst UNC team in recent history. They did not have a good recruiting class outside of him. And so he was trying to make up for the lack of other threats on the court. And yes, that leads to, inefficient playmaking and scoring opportunities. But at the same time, 2 years ago, he was, top three lock going into this draft, and the guy that, has been McDonald's MVP, All American, and he's been all those little pro am type of type of games. He always seems to be that little MVP. Not that that has anything to do with this specific award, but I think after last season, his draft stock is kind of slipping. He's probably going to not fall where he thought he would a couple of years ago. He's going to come into the league with a lot of big chip on his shoulder and something to prove more than a lot of these other guys. And obviously, we know the skill set is there. He's a very dynamic scorer that can get very hot and very streaky. Solid playmaker. He's lacking a little bit on the defensive end, but Rookie of the Year is not a defensive award. And so, because he's slipping as well, he's probably going to go to a team that's a little bit more well-established, a team that probably made the playoffs last year and has a little bit better player development. And I think all those things kind of play into his strengths. Some of these picks are a little situational because we don't know what team they're going to be picked up by. And so we don't know, is Cole Anthony going to be coming off the bench? Is Aaron Nesmith going to be coming off the bench? And some of those types of things for people later in the first round, as opposed to, lottery players that are most likely going to be getting as many minutes as possible. But yeah, I don't know. I'm really excited to see what Cole Anthony does, especially with all the negativity that's kind of came his way after this last season. I think he'll prove a lot of people wrong.
Yeah, so I think Cole Anthony's a great idea, great pick, especially because he was my second sort of
Oh,
dark horse candidate. But I did have a potential third one that I was kind of looking at, so I'm gonna toss him in there. But no, I agree with what you were saying about Cole Anthony. I mean, people forget he was one of the best high school recruits out of that out of that class. And I agree. It's just I think UNC, just because of how horrific they were this year, it put a lot of pressure on him, forced him to take a lot of bad shots. Because I know his efficiency was not that great, but at the same time, I mean, he was touted as just an extremely talented scoring guard. And to me, rookie of the year, that's what the weight's all at. If you can put the ball in the hoop and you can do it better than anyone else, I think you're going to win that. And I just think that's those scoring numbers, that points per game, is just weighed so heavily in that award. And so I do agree. I think he's a great pick. It's as we kind of been saying through these, it's going to be the fit. If he can get into that role where he can gobble up a lot of those minutes and really have the time and to go out there and play, I definitely think he's a good pick there. But I'm going to go ahead and go into my, I guess technically my third dark horse candidate. But so um, my next one is Kara Lewis Jr. Out of Alabama.
that was my next pick.
Perfect.
Yeah, nice.
So, and the reason why is just because I mean, dude's a sniper, and I think I put a lot of weight on 3-point shooting as a dark horse candidate because it's one of those things where I mean, man, if you're hitting, you're hitting, and if you can do that a lot, I mean, for example, I mean, look at Duncan Robinson. I mean, dude is now one of the best 3-point shooters in the league because he's been hitting, and so I think it's one of those attributes of basketball players is if you're just an absolute sniper, that's a big deal for you. And so I kind of really look and expect from him. Again, roles or fits a big deal, but I really want him to mature a lot more physically. I mean, he's 6'3", 165 pounds. It's very, very skinny. I'd really like to see him kind of really get a little bit more of an NBA ready body in this off season before they kind of move to the beginning of the next season, which I believe the NBA announced was December 25th. I could be wrong there, but I believe that's what they said. That's kind of what I look from him is kind of just maturing physically, get that NBA ready body, and just be ready to shoot the lights out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, I said Kyra Lewis was another player that I had, but his down the court speed is definitely one of his higher attributes. But something that I'm a little bit worried to see kind of how he transitions into the next level is his ability to change the pace because he's such a speedster. We've seen guys like John Wall or John Morant that can, that have that explosive burst, but then at the same time they can also, let up and change their speed at like on a dime, and that's not something that we can really expect from Kyra Lewis coming in day one. And so maybe that's something that he can develop, but that's something that a lot of those speedsters do to be able to change their pace in order to confuse the defenders and kind of get the shots they want. And because of that, he doesn't really have a good floater game. And once he initializes the contact down low, he also kind of struggles, finding it into the hoop. But at the same time, I mean, I do think he has a lot of the attributes that, especially because he's most likely going to be going towards the end of the lottery. I think he'll be going into a team like I don't know. He'll be going to a team in which he's probably going to be a spark plug off the bench, and he can definitely kind of embrace that role in the first half of the season, draw a lot of interest from the team, and then kind of work his way up into the starting role once they realize how special of a player they have on their hands. But with that being said, I'll go into my next pick, and that's going to be Tyrese Maxey, a similar type of player, but a freshman out of Kentucky. Obviously, another player that's been slipping a little bit in recent projections. But he's actually a pretty similar player to Kyra Lewis, but he's not as on-ball dominant. He's definitely more of a catch and shoot type of player. But the reason that I'm really like excited to see his game transition to the next level is that at the college level, anytime Kentucky was having big games, close games down the stretch, he was their go-to guy, and he was an absolute clutch gem for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that kind of shows me that the mental side of his game is already in check. And that's something that, a lot of players will try to get throughout the course of their NBA career. But not that, being clutch is everything, but I think it's kind of a good indicator that, he's able to turn it on in a given minute's notice. And so I think it'll be exciting to see kind of how he's able to, transition his skill set into the next level. And especially since he's, his wingspan for a guard is a little bit bigger than, the typical prototypical shooting guard in the draft. And so, he's pretty solid on defense. He's someone that's probably going to, his on ball defense is something that's going to get him extra minutes from day one on the court. Because there's a lot of draft prospects that come in with very rusty defensive capabilities, and it doesn't bode well for them getting extra minutes day one, even though the offensive side of their game is there. But I think because he's going to be able to get extra minutes on the court because of his defensive playing, and he has that third dimension to his game in the sense that he's a very clutch shooter. Not that whatever team he's going to isn't going to have better players that they can go to, but I think he might just become an absolute microwave when he's playing in Madison Square Garden or some of these places that he's just been dreaming of. I feel like he's ready for that next big leap more than a lot of these other guys. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when I watch Tyrese Maxey, like the one word that comes to mind for me is just like explosive, and it's not necessarily like as
Yeah.
an athlete, but just like the way he plays. It's so just like you've got to watch him. He's, as you said, I mean, he's so clutch. And I do agree. I think he's a great pick for the dark horse candidate. And I know for him, and it's with a lot of these guys this season, and I don't know why it's just something I harp on so much, but I mean, for him, I just think he needs to be a little bit more efficient, especially with his shot selection. But at the same time, I mean, he's a good shooter. I love his mentality. I think having that close mentality, that aggressive, we're winning this game, I think it's a really big deal, especially for rookies coming in, because a lot of times these rookies have poor motors, and then they go in and do terrible their first couple months in the season. And then some of the vets are like, hey buddy, wake up, like this is the NBA. You need to be a little bit better here. You need to have the mentality of every day we're going to go in and slaughter the other team. And I think he's already got that built into his system, and I think that's a really big deal. But yeah, so with that, for our Rookie of the Year section, let's go ahead and take our first break.